Hi, Jason. Thank you for having us. The Florida Marine Science Educators Association is a network of educators throughout the state of Florida. We are a regional chapter of the National Marine Science Educators Association, and we produce different content like these events. So thank you for joining us. And we are having our annual conference in April of this year in Fort Pierce, Florida, and it's being hosted by FAU's Harbor Branch. So if you'd like more information, we'll drop a link in the chat for you.
Thank you for that introduction. Again, sorry for the little microphone snafu. You think after doing this for 20 odd years, I'd know better, but that is always something. But let me go ahead and start out in space and show you exactly where this new facility is located. I got folks coming in from Iowa, Panama City, woohoo, New Smyrna Beach. All right, but here is where the new Mote Sea is located. We are in the heart of Sarasota, right next to the interstate. Now, this is not where we got our start. We are actually founded by a remarkable lady named Dr. Eugenie Clark, who we'll meet in just a second. But now we have this new facility called the Mote Science Education Aquarium, and education and science are as much a part of it as the aquarium itself is. And this is some beautiful footage from the Sarasota drone guy who made this available for me to showcase what it looks like on the outside of the building. But of course, we're going to take a look along in the inside here. But yeah, as I said, we actually got started about 70 years ago in 1955, 71 years ago by the Shark Lady. She was famous for her study of living sharks and did so in a serious and systematic way. And she popularized her science in the journals of the Lady Home Journal and National Geographic, and also with publishing books like The Lady with the Spear, and she always had a desire to start a place where people can learn more about the sea. And so back then she founded a field station. It later became known as the Cape Hayes Marine Laboratory, and it was a small building, just about 12 by 10, not very big, but she quickly established her reputation for working with living sharks in the sea pen that she had constructed outside. And we continued to grow and grow, eventually moving up to a place called City Island and expanding to over 38 other research programs, including everything from sea turtles and manatees to fisheries and aquaculture to coral reefs, and of course, opened up the public aquarium, where we've been welcoming guests of all ages from pre-K to gray for over 40 years. But out there on City Island, things get a little cramped. We have those 38 research programs, and so our CEO and our board said, what would happen if we took about the 60,000 square feet of exhibit space and moved it inland, where it'll be much more accessible and equitable for people to get to, and turned all that remaining space into education and to research. They've been knocking down boardrooms and bathrooms to make laboratory space for those scientists, and now they'll have plenty of room to set up shop out there and expand their operation. But in the meantime, we've got this new facility here, and so I wanted to talk to you a little bit today about this, and I'm going to need you to get ready to type into the chat, because again, I'm going to need your feedback on this. But here we are in what is called the Conservation Laboratory, and aquarium conservation is one of the challenges that we're facing here. Mote Aquarium is advancing innovative animal husbandry methods to sustainably reproduce aquatic animals for both education and conservation purposes. And the goal of this work is to help reduce reliance on wild collection while supporting the needs of aquariums and also this AZA accredited institution, the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, around the world. So having said all that mouthful, go ahead and type into the chat. What do you think is the best answer to this question here? What is aquarium husbandry? 1, designing exhibits to look natural and engaging for guests. 2, daily care of animals, including feeding, cleaning, enrichment, and monitoring health. 3, teaching animals special behaviors. Or 4, mentoring the next generation of aquarium specialists. What do you think? Type in the chat. 1, 2, 3, or 4. Got a guess for 2? And yeah, the best answer there is number 2, the daily care of animals, including feeding, cleaning, enrichment, and monitoring health. And so if you could see what this room looks like on the outside, this is what you would see looking in. And we've got these special aquaria set up for raising and developing mostly jellyfish, but a few other special creatures are coming online as well. And the goal is to use these innovative animal husbandry methods to sustainably reproduce aquatic animals, both for education and also for working with other zoos and aquarium to reduce their impact on the wild. And here you can see Rebecca and Amanda working in the space. And they also work with a number of teens and other audiences to encourage them to maybe enter this as a career field. In fact, we have Amanda Felix here, a little bio on her. And I wanted to show you a short video where she's going to kind of introduce her work in this fascinating world of aquarium careers. Let's check it out.
Hi, my name is Amanda Hodo, and I'm an aquarium biologist 1 at Mote Marine Laboratory and Aquarium. I was born and raised in blustery, chilly Chicago. I went to college in the cornfields of Grinnell, Iowa, and now I live in sunny, beautiful Sarasota. Come with me, and I'll show you what I do. So how am I a hero? I'm a hero for conservation. I breed fish to lessen the impacts of aquariums on our oceans and to help our industry be more sustainable. As an aquarist working with the Line Seahorse's Species Survival Plan, I breed new genetic lines and share those offspring with other AZA-accredited facilities. I also spent about 2 years breeding neon gobies, which we released into many of our exhibits to improve the overall health of our fish and systems. There are over 250 in our shark exhibit alone. I love to look for them while I work and often find them. I'm also a hero for diversity. When I was a teen, I never saw aquarists that looked like me. My goal is to help inspire a love of the ocean and science into kids in underserved communities. Because if you see it, then you feel more like you can achieve it. So for me, visibility is key. I've been featured on Mote's podcast, Two Sea Fans, talking about cygnapids, have done a live stream with Sea Trek TV during Black History Month about African Americans in marine science, and currently serve as a mentor of Mote's Sci Girls program, which aims to help young girls explore STEM career opportunities. I love getting young people excited about science, which aligns with Mote's mission. What else do I love to do at work? Scavenge donuts. What? Seahorses need to eat constantly, and so do I. Eat cheese. Socialize. Well, I am an eye on the disc profile after all. Thanks for watching. Jacques Cousteau out.
So thank you for that, Amanda. And so that's a short little video that I wanted to highlight with you. When these programs are actually live with our audiences, I'm hoping to have the actual aquarium biologists like Amanda in here, where we'll have them available on microphone to answer the students' questions. But yeah, so that's a little look at a day in the life of an aquarium biologist. And so having learned a little bit about what it takes to get started here with aquarium biology, I wanted to throw it all over to you. And this is the interactive part where I need your help. We're going to pretend that we are on the exhibit committee for Mote Aquarium. And we're wondering what animals should we add next to the exhibit. So here's your choices. We got lionfish, blobfish, axolotl, electric ray, blue-ringed octopus, reef fish, giant clam, hagfish, penguins, cuttlefish, moon jellies, or giant octopus. You can either type in the chat, or you're feeling especially adventurous and can unmute your microphone. You can let me know which animal would you like for us to feature next. You got to vote for the blobfish, for the giant clams, for the the cuttlefish, the electric ray. I'm going to throw you a little bit of a curve now. So let's go ahead and take another look at these organisms and look at it through the lens of how much it might cost us to acquire some of these critters. And so here you can see the dollar value kind of extracted a little bit, but just to kind of show you how much it would cost to either acquire these animals or to keep them on display in a zoo or an aquarium. Now, does that change your evaluation of which animals that you'd like to display? Let me continue to mix it up a little bit and let you know that, of course, some of these animals are kind of dangerous to humans. Some of them would require extra precautions for us to display, like the blue-ringed octopus, highly venomous, only about the size of a golf ball, but has enough venom to kill at least 10 humans or more. Of course, why is the electric ray dangerous? It's electric, right? And what about the lionfish? You probably have heard about that. If you've been in Florida or anywhere in the south east or in the Atlantic or Caribbean, you know that this is an exotic invasive species that has venomous spines and can be difficult to work with if you're not careful. All right, so here's another consideration for you. The upward green triangles indicate how popular they are with aquarium guests. Most of these, like the axolotl, reef fish, penguins, and giant octopus, are perennial favorites, but some of the others kind of get mixed reviews. Jellies, cuttlefish, the rays, the lionfish, you could take it or leave it. Some are very popular with some guests, some not so with the others. And the hagfish, as my friend Allison points out, can be quite problematic. They don't often swim around a lot. They're not always pleasant to look at. They do have fascinating biology. But if you were actually looking at this and as a committee member, you wouldn't look at it in this particular perspective. You would probably want to organize your data, right? So let's go ahead and simplify things for you and turn this into a table. And here we've reorganized things according to cost, popularity, and whether precautions have to be taken in special place for some of these organisms. But I'm going to throw you a few other conditions to think about too. Let's also look at the lifespan, average lifespan of these organisms. And then also we're going to look at the IUCN status, the International Union for Conservation of Nature, founded back in 1958, is one of the global bodies that kind of determines how threatened a potential species is. They can mark them as critically endangered if there's only a few left, and least concern would be the ones that are relatively abundant or have the least likelihood of going extinct. And you can see some other evaluations there as well. So, any reevaluations in your choices? Yeah, let's go ahead and walk through this a little bit and think about it. So here we got the blobfish, the electric ray, the penguin, the giant octopus, and the blue ring octopus. Kind of expensive animals to either acquire or showcase and display. Other animals like the lionfish, the cuttlefish, the hagfish, the reef fish, very popular animals, but not as expensive. And the axolotls, relatively abundant in the aquarium trade, and so are giant clams, believe it or not. And also, of course, you can tell from the display behind me, moon jellies, not a problem being able to grow those in abundance in zoos and aquariums. All right, let's also look at how popular they are. One of the favorites for me, just like one of you, is the axolotls. Axolotls for AZA, yep. Probably one of the least favorite, though, are those hagfish for a variety of reasons. Here's another way of looking at it, that lifespan. Let's take a look at that. Which animal on this chart lives the longest? Which animal lives the longest? Yeah, that giant clam, believe it or not. So I've seen these for sale in reef shops. They are aquacultured, but these giant clams can live for decades, sometimes centuries or more. So they can be very long-lived. Many of the deep sea creatures also are long-lived. They usually have slow metabolisms like the blobfish and the hagfish. And so often they live very long times. In fact, we don't really know how long the blobfish might live. It's estimated that it might live for 100 years or more. And then you can see how it breaks down for the other critters. And then also, we want to consider how threatened these species are. Now, zoos and aquariums do a great job of protecting species, usually as part of what's called a species survival program, but especially places that are accredited by the Association of Zoos and Aquariums have a long list of concerns, protocols, and information sharing that they're doing in order to keep these animals alive, not only in human care, but also out in nature. And so there's, of course, plenty of activity going on with breeding captive axolotls, even though they're absolutely critically endangered. Same thing for the penguins that we have downstairs. We have Humboldt penguins here at Mote. This is new for us. We've never had penguins before, but again, part of a species survival program. And good thing, too, because many penguin species are threatened throughout the range. Many of them are classified as vulnerable. And then you have things like the blobfish, which just doesn't have a lot of information on it. So we don't know whether it's endangered or not. Probably not, but that's one of the things that zoos and aquariums can contribute to as well, is more information. And then you have things like the moon jellies behind me here, which really don't have an evaluation on them. They're relatively abundant. In fact, they're so abundant that they're not even classified as least concern. So having thought about all of that, might you want to refactor your consideration for which animals to choose. And in the actual program with this, I might have the opportunity to do breakout groups if the teacher's amenable to it. We'll have worksheets available for them to structure their thoughts about which animals to choose. But going back to our presentation here, if anyone wants to reevaluate which animal they would choose for the exhibit committee, you can type that into the chat now. While you're doing that, let me go ahead and show you for reals the kind of creatures you can see when you visit Mote Sea. So here at Mote, we have lionfish on exhibit, exotic invasive creatures, a lot of storytelling that can go along with that. The penguins, as I mentioned, part of the species survival program. We have lots and lots of reef fish, both Finding Nemo and Dory, as well as many others. And new for us, too, is the giant Pacific octopus, which I have never had a chance to work with this animal before, but fascinating creature. Of course, they're giant. They get big, usually around 8 to 10 feet in human care, though there are historical records of these creatures reaching 32 feet at stretch of their arm length. Absolutely gigantic creatures, but they don't live long, usually only 4 to 5 years or so. And so we have a creature downstairs named Brizzy, and so she's on display down there. Really fascinating exhibit. I don't know if we'll get to see her today, but we'll try to get over there. And then, of course, axolotls. We love those. In fact, I'll take a little aside here to say that we have a new program here where I take this contraption that I've got here called Marvin, the Mote Aquarium Roving Virtual Exhibit Navigator. And this is a little cart that I've got. And not doing the best job of displaying it here, but I can take this little contraption here all over the aquarium. And one of the places I can take it is to see our axolotls in what we call a wonderful animal virtual encounter. And that's available for all ages, but best for 3rd through 12th grade. We'll differentiate it for you. And that can be available also to lifelong learning programs too. And basically all the animals you can adopt can potentially be virtually visited through the help of Marvin here. Well, let's go ahead and take a look at this. This is how actual AZA organizations evaluate species for there. And you can see there's a few other considerations on the tree as well. So is an organism, for example, part of the mission of the organization? Is the species captive bred and obtained in desirable quantities? Can sustainable foods be acquired for that species? Those are additional considerations that our aquarium biologists must take in when considering which animals to feature at our aquarium. And I don't even know what a blobfish eats. Can you even get the food for it? I don't know. Hagfish probably not so hard to feed since they're scavengers, usually eating decaying flesh. So probably they would be easy enough to find food for. And then some other considerations too. Is the animal required to be collected from the wild? Does collection have a long-term negative impact on wild populations? Is there a long-term conservation benefit to wild populations if the animal is acquired? And if not collected from the wild, was the original source of the acquisition sustainable? Can the species be obtained legally? And can sustainable feeds be acquired for this species? That's another thing that we're working with out of this space here is food. And so I don't know if I can try, give me a break here and see if I can show you. We've got a nice little system here. You probably have seen these in classrooms too. We've got sea monkeys in abundance. We've got a couple of different stages of brine shrimp growing here. We'll learn a little bit more about their life cycle if we have time. But they start off in this dry packet of cysts, egg-like structures that can be broken open and hydrated. And they usually exist out in nature on dry riverbeds and lake beds for long periods of time. But when the rains come, that hydrates the cyst and they break open and get into this little tiny life cycle part of their life called the nauplii. These are 24-hour old brine shrimps, and sometimes some of our larger or smaller animals need these smaller kinds of food sources. And then we have the adult brine shrimp and the other ones. And these are what we feed to the jellyfish and many of the other creatures here at the aquarium. All right, I've never been to the Omaha Zoo, but I'll put that on my list. You say they have a great jelly presentation and habitat. And so the exhibit that you see behind me is kind of functional. It's a workhorse lab, but we do have a much more polished display downstairs and also a nice interactive exhibit that'll be sharing with you as part of our examination of the life cycle of these creatures. So what are our scientists doing exactly in this space? Well, as I showed you, they are pioneering alternatives. This lab showcases live culture systems that grow these jellyfish and brine shrimp at different stages. Also, other aquatic animals are being raised here. And we're trying to do this in-house to provide a sustainable model of aquarium practices and support the care of our resident animals. And so another quick question for you. These jellies that are behind me, what are they most closely related to? 1, sea angels. 2, comb jellies. 3, corals. Or 4, sea squirts. Do you know? It's okay to guess. Believe it or not, the best answer is number 3, corals. Corals and jellies are actually very closely related. Now, comb jellies kind of tricks you, but comb jellies are actually distantly related. They look very similar, right? Comb jellies and true jellies look very similar. They're gelatinous, but there's some key differences. But believe it or not, it's actually corals that are the closest cousins to our jellies. So these are some of the creatures that we grow here. Now, speaking of these, has anyone ever touched a jellyfish before? How would you describe it? Is it something pleasant? Kind of snotty and slimy, right? Slippy, slimy, squishy, gross. What about stung? Anyone had a encounter with a jellyfish that did not go well? Did not feel great? One of the things we have to caution folks about when they go out into the beaches around here in Florida is that even if you see something like a Portuguese man-o-war, which is related to jellyfish, be careful because those tentacles can be quite long and still potent enough to give you a wallop. So not a nice thing to have. What about eating? Anyone's tasted jellyfish before? You can eat them. Yeah. In fact, I do a Master Naturalist program where we have a potluck at the end, and one of my students brought in this package of jellyfish that we added to the salad. You have to prepare it and usually soak it ahead of time because it's packaged in brine and quite salty. But people do collect them and eat them. But yeah, and speaking of jellyfish, we got to talk about the fish in the room here. We call them jellyfish, of course, but are they really fish? No, there's some key differences between them. That's why most aquarium marine science educators like to call them sea jellies instead. But comparing a fish to a true jelly, you can see that they both live in water, but that's about the only thing they have in common. Of course, the fish are vertebrates. The jellies are invertebrates. Fish, how do they breathe? How do they get the oxygen? Through their gills, right? Up at the front. But how do the jellies breathe? Do they have gills? No, actually they are able to diffuse oxygen into their bodies through their skin. And the fish have a central nervous system just like you and I. They have a brain and a spine, and that is not the case with jellies. Instead, there's no brains about them. Doesn't mean they're dumb. They just respond to stimuli in a different way through what's called a nerve net, kind of a distributed system of nerves throughout their body. So there are some things the same about fish, but most things different. In fact, jellies are in this group called cnidarians, which do include their cousins, the anthozoans, like sea anemones, corals, and sea pins. There's about 2,900 different kinds of those creatures. But the Scyphozoa, the true jellies, is what we're going to be focusing on today, over here. And you can see that they are cousins to those corals and sea anemones, but also related to the much more ferocious cubozoas, the box jellies, which do really pack a wallop. But over here, the Scyphozoans, or true jellies, there's about 200 different kinds that we know of in science, but we're always finding new species. And one thing that ties all of these creatures together is the fact that they have these stinging cells, these cnidocytes or nematocysts. They are mostly found in saltwater, though here in Florida we do have some freshwater species. They're not too common. There's an exotic species that came from Southeast Asia that sometimes shows up in our freshwater lakes and streams. But most of them found out in saltwater. And again, one thing that ties all of these critters together are these stinging cells called nematocysts. And so all of them have these special structures that they use for capturing their food, but also for defending themselves against predators. So it's used both for predation and for catching food, and for defending themselves against predators. And here in our laboratory, though, we fortunately have an animal that doesn't really sting too badly unless you're especially allergic to them. And that are these moon jellies that I've been talking about. So let's take a little closer look at them and see what they look like. That squishy part of the jelly is up there in the umbrella or the bell. And they do have stinging tentacles, but again, those are usually enough to capture their prey, but not enough to really bother you. And so as you can see, no brains, no hearts, no really major organs of any kind. They do have a series of different kinds of canals that run through their body, and those are used for transporting nutrients around, as well as hormones and other signals. They have these long, stringy structures underneath them called their oral arms that have little tiny hairs. We call those cilia, and they use those to kind of pass food and other substances into their body. They only have one mouth, one opening, the mouth. That's also not only used for bringing food in, but also for getting rid of food as well. So don't think about that too much. But they only have one opening, the mouth. And then over there within their gastric filaments, they have their gonads, or reproductive organs, because believe it or not, even though these are relatively simple creatures in appearance, they actually have quite complex life cycles. And you've probably seen this before. As adults, they do have dioecious characters, so male and females. They reproduce through spawning, and the females will sometimes brood the eggs. They'll suck them up with their oral arms and brood them in a little pouch before releasing the first stage in the life cycle of the jellies, what's called the planula larvae. These are little free-swimming little things that are smaller than a grain of rice. They look like little worm-like creatures that float around in the plankton usually for a few days, sometimes a few weeks, swimming around in there before settling down and starting the first phase of a jelly's life cycle, which looks very different from the adults. This is called the polyp stage, where they settle down and metamorphose into this little tiny upside down sea anemone looking like creature. And these are teeny tiny. I'm not able to bring you over today, but in the future I'll do that. In the aquarium right around here is basically a little petri dish, and on that petri dish is a little cover of fuzz. Just look like little white dots or pimples all over it, and those are the itty-bitty little tiny polyps of the moon jelly. Again, smaller than a grain of rice, but very fascinating to see. And they can rest in this stage for weeks, months, sometimes seasons at a time, slowly reproducing asexually, budding over and over again till you have a little carpet of these critters down there in the bottom. And then when the season, the time, and tide are just right, they'll start to go through this life cycle stage called scyphistoma. Say that with me 5 times. No, I'm just kidding. Scyphistoma, another metamorphose stage where they go through this process of basically stacking up like little dinner plates. And what happens is they have this ability to kind of create little miniature versions of them that stack up in this formation here. And then top one will start to wiggle off and pop off and form what's called a nephyra. These are about the size of a pencil eraser, usually a little smaller than that, and they break away as basically free-swimming larvae, slowly growing larger and larger, entering into the plankton where they swim around until eventually becoming adults. And so, again, very simple creature, but complex life cycle, both as a sexual adult, free-swimming stages, as well as an asexual phase down on the bottom. And this has been kind of a mystery for our aquarium biologists for a long time. They had a really hard time figuring out exactly what the conditions were that would induce those little tiny polyps to go through that process of strobilation and transform into miniature adults. But they finally figured out that it's a combination of salinity and temperature, as well as a few other factors. And one of the other things that they figured out is that they've got to keep these animals in some very special containers. These things are called chrysals. And you can notice some features about them. There's no real moving parts. In fact, they have to be very careful with these delicate creatures to make sure that there's no big pump intakes where they can get slurped up and then shredded by the pump impellers. Usually they're very slow, gentle moving streams of water. Usually not a lot of air bubbles in them, except maybe in these sequestered little areas for a water movement. Air bubbles can be a real problem for the jellyfish. If you get a little tiny air bubble under the umbrella or bell of a jellyfish, it can act like a little tiny drill, and just the buoyancy of that little bubble bubbling up and down will eventually poke right through the bell of the jellyfish and turn it into Swiss cheese, so that can be bad news for them. So they have these very special kinds of aquaria called chrysals for developing them, and then they've got a special series in the back for the babies. And here you can see a close-up view of what it looks like. Again, this is a close-up view of the polyps going through that, or the scyphostoma stage. They also have kind of a cyst-like stage called a podocyte, which is especially resistant to perturbations, to being disturbed. They can survive high temperatures and low food quality, and can remain in that podocyst stage for, again, seasons at a time if they need to, before eventually metamorphosing into this little tiny cute stage, itty bitty Aphyra, which I think are absolutely adorable. This happens at around 62 degrees Fahrenheit in the spring. The polyps grow and have begun to elongate and stack up into those strobili and clone themselves, and the little strobili break free and become these free swimming Ephyra. Absolutely delightful little creatures. Now, the moon jelly themselves can grow quite large, a little bit smaller than a dinner plate, but usually the bells are about this big. Sometimes I've seen them a little larger. There are different species. It's a rather cosmopolitan one, found throughout the circumtropical world, but they do have different species of the moon jellies. And of course, we've got to feed them. And as we showed you there, we have that brine shrimp set up there. But what do you feed the brine shrimp? Well, you feed them algae. Sometimes we'll also grow these little animalcules called rotifers, which are even smaller than the brine shrimp for some of our smaller critters. And we can also feed these to the jellies as well. But usually this is the adult stage of the brine shrimp, aka sea monkeys, which again have a really kind of complicated life cycle in and of themselves. They have that dormant cyst stage where they can eventually hatch out either directly or over time if they've dried out. Turn into what's called the naupliar or nauplii stage, where they're little tiny critters just kind of popping and bopping and moving about in the water column. And you saw that with the 24-hour-old brine shrimp. And then eventually they get large enough to start becoming reproductive. And this is something you can easily do in your school laboratory or at home. And look for brine shrimp or sea monkeys. And again, the goal is to create live food for animals that need it, like these seahorses here, which fortunately I'm glad to say we've had a lot of success in breeding these as well. And we're starting to pick it up again here, it looks like, in the new Mote Science Education Aquarium too. And of course, famously, the seahorse fathers are the ones that give birth here. So this is the male seahorse pulsating and pushing out the fry that are coming out of his brood pouch there. And when the baby seahorses emerge, they're basically miniature adults ready to fend for themselves, but at this stage is when they probably need those little tiny nauplii or even the rotifer food source in order to survive and eventually grow up big enough to live on their own. Some other critters that we have grown here at Mote include things like this. Does anyone recognize what this is? Type in the chat if you know what I'm looking at here. What kind of curious creature is this? Mermaid's purses, yes, exactly, which are the egg cases for sharks. In fact, some sharks are egg-laying, or what we call oviparous, thank you. And the shark in particular that does this most commonly or frequently here at our aquarium is the epaulet shark. But you will, yes, we'll also see them in shark eggs and also skates. About 30% of sharks lay eggs. There's over 500 species. Some of them, like the epaulets here, as well as the coral cat sharks and the bamboo sharks, will lay eggs. Many sharks give birth to live young, but these are great creatures, thinking about what kind of animals you might want to display in an aquarium. These do pretty well. They don't get really large, only about as long as your arm. They're not too picky in terms of care and maintenance. They're pretty forgiving, and we actually have some of these in our touch habitat as well, so you can actually pet a shark. When you pet a shark from head to tail, it's quite smooth, but of course from tail to head, it's quite rough because of those dermal denticles. And they're also famous for being one of the few sharks that can actually get up out of the water and walk across the land. You can see that it's kind of demonstrated in some of these animals here that are using their strong pectoral and pelvic fins to kind of walk across the bottom. So where these animals live in the tide pools of Australia and Indonesia, sometimes the tide goes out, trapping them in those pools, but they can kind of climb up and out of the water and move over to the next pool if they need to, using those strong pectoral muscles, actually getting up out of the water and moving across the land. Fascinating. And then the other purpose of this space is training for the future. And so let's go ahead and talk a little bit about that. We have a couple of different opportunities for high school and early college students. In this lab, students can gain hands-on experience in culturing these delicate species, as well as learning essential skills in husbandry and applied research. And those experiences prepare them for their contribution to marine conservation and sustainable aquarium care, and gives them professional connections too. And so which pathway provides the best experience into aquatic husbandry? Do you think it's one, the fish keeping as a hobby? Do you think maybe it's, I don't know, maybe doing an internship at an accredited aquarium? What about this one? What about volunteering at an animal shelter? Could number 4, becoming scuba certified, be useful if you want to work in the field of aquarium and aquatic husbandry? What about number 5, becoming a finfluencer on YouTube? Will that help you get a career in this area? What do you think? Of course, the correct answer is that there are multiple opportunities and pathways to these careers. And one of the ones that I definitely recommend is, if you are in the position to do so, is consider either an apprenticeship or an internship at our aquarium. The difference being that the apprenticeship is usually for people who have had a little bit of experience already working at a zoo or an aquarium, but we have this program here at Mote Sea where you can come in for about a year or so and get really up close and personal hands-on experience with folks who have been doing this for years. And it's a paid program as well, so there is a stipend available for it. And so that's a bigger commitment when the people have had a little bit more training. But if you're just getting started, just getting your feet wet, quite literally, doing an aquarium internship is also a great job, and this is an experience for undergraduates here. Again, a paid experience in our aquarium internship program. And that's a quick look at our new Aquarium Conservation WISE program. And I'll be happy to answer any questions. Go ahead and type them in the chat. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and see if we can tour the lab. And then do number 5 for the clicks, right? Be a finfluencer on YouTube. That might be the answer. Who knows? So type in the chat if you have any questions for me. And we'll see if I can get my little contraption here out the door and see if we can go ahead and I'll let Lisa know that we're about to head out. We're going to head out now and see if she can get the door for me. And let's go see some manatees, huh? Enough of Jason talking. Let's see if we can get out here. Now, this is funny. You're probably not going to be able to appreciate this, but right here, a little tiny doorway. And behind that little door, there's a little platform. And that's where I was this morning to do what's called an otter wave, wildlife animal virtual encounter for our otter program. There's a little tiny platform behind our alligator snapping turtles that allows me to bring a miniature version of Marvin up there and show them. Now, it looks like maybe the otters have already gone to sleep. So sorry about that. But let me go ahead and switch things around a little bit and see if I can get my cameras to show you something a little bit more interesting than just a wall there. Yay, there I am. And then let's do a little bit of, yep, it's locked onto me. So hopefully this camera, yeah, this camera is now locked onto me. And so behind me is the otter exhibit. And that allows us to give them a lot more room to roam. They are animals that have been orphaned, so we can't release them back out into nature. But they serve as nice animal ambassadors for their species. Now, the facility out at City Island, still a great location. We welcomed over 300,000 visitors there each year. We expect to at least double that in the new location here at the University Town Center. We're between the UTC Mall to the north and the Benderson Rowing Aquatic Park to our south, and certainly expect to double it. It's much more equitable and accessible to get out here nowadays because of the interstate right next door to us. It was a little bit of a trick, a little bit of a trial to sometimes get out to the barrier island, out to City Island with the old aquarium, but we're hoping a lot more people can come out here. But we're still going to use that, but now we have that 60,000 square feet of space available for research and education now. And so that will be rehabilitated campus, and we'll make it a little bit more resilient to the storms that we've been experiencing out there, especially in the past season or two, and make that available for marine science and education. So we're going to have our ecology summer camps out there, and the ones that are over here will be focused more on things like STEM programs here at the lab. All right, so yeah, I was on exhibit. Is Mote still in use? All right, and then since we don't have the actual otters on display, I got my little puppet from earlier in today. You can just imagine them frolicking out here. They've got a lot more room to roam, but I do see some other critters behind me, so let's continue out here on the 3rd floor while I wait for any more questions that you might have and see if we can recognize who's behind me here. All right. So back here we have Lou and Buffett. That's Buffett. And these, again, are animals that were deemed non-releasable by the state of Florida. There's a few freshwater fish in here as well, like the long-nosed gar. And so those animals are here at the top of the aquarium in this beautiful new exhibit, where we've got this fascinating or fantastic location behind the scenes, where the manatees can be brought in for animal husbandry and veterinary care in this facility behind me, but then they have a lot more volume here to swim around in. So over 1 million gallons, and here the manatees have 150,000 gallons of water. Their old exhibit at City Island, I believe, was around 75,000, so we've more than doubled it, I think, here for the new place. And that's about 12 feet deep behind me. And yeah, so the neat thing about the lab is that we do have a couple of manatees that will be our forever friends. They're, of course, here at the behest of the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, and we're happy to be stewards for them, good stewards for them, and have them serve as animal ambassadors. But what you don't see, and what's happening out at City Island, you were asking about that, is that we've now become a stage 2 care facility for manatees. So that's new for us here at Mote. We have the ability now out at City Island to care for those animals that are almost ready to go back out into nature. The primary care would be at places like Zoo Tampa, where they would get, especially animals that have especially a lot of trauma. They can be nursed back to health, but when they're almost ready to be released back out into nature, they can come now to places like Mote as a secondary care facility. And we just welcomed 3 new manatees in that. We had cabbage and sleet last year. We were able to release those animals successfully, and then we've got 3 new ones. I haven't even learned their names yet. And where did the animals that were not at Mote before come from? Well, working with zoos and aquariums around the state of Florida, as well as around the nation and the world, we're able to find animals that, like the penguins, that needed a little bit more room, and so we were able to get those from other zoos and aquariums as well. It's part of what we call a surplusing program. Again, some of them are grown in zoos or aquariums, like the seahorses, so that we don't have to take them from nature. And then others have been acquired in care, human care for a while, but just need a new home. And so places like Mote might open up a new facility and have room for them to come roam. And then behind me here, my friends at the Manatee Lagoon, we were sponsored also a little bit of an exhibit here from Florida Power and Light, featuring Florida uplands. And so behind me here is a nice gopher tortoise exhibit. I don't see our gopher tortoise out right now. But also behind me is a little bit of mangrove exhibits as well. And then we have a diamondback terrapin on display over here. So let me go ahead and see if I can switch my camera angle back around so that you can see the manatees while I see if I can find any more of your final questions before we have to go today. So that's Lou. And you see he's kind of got a banged up tail there, which is part of the reason that he's in our care. Still not really able to go back out into nature because of that. All right. Allie, do we have any final questions before we go today?
I don't think so, but if anyone has any final questions, oh, what are enrichment items in the tank from Grant? I think
Yeah, all
he's
right. So what
talking
kind of
about Lou's friend there.
manatee toys do we have? And so you can see if we switch back over to it here, this is a variety of items that are made by our biologists, and that's one of the things that our interns get to work on too. And so these are cleverly made out of PVC and other durable items. Manatees are quite strong. And so this looks like some kind of kale feeder, but there's a few little knobs and sliding parts on it to give them something novel to look at and experience in their exhibits every single day. And so our aquarium biologists are constantly coming up with ways of working with these animals to make their lives as comfortable and stimulating as possible. And for animals like the otters, that can be especially challenging because, of course, these are very active, very curious creatures. And so we'll find all kinds of different ways of keeping them stimulated. We'll get little balls and toys that will hide food in. Their new exhibit also has the room to put down some natural vegetation as well. So we have a little divot in the enclosure where we can put down mulch or pine straw or dirt or other natural substances, and they can dig around and look for food. We'll also feed them some treats. Normally they get a diet of fish, but we'll also supplement that with things like clams or crayfish. Usually those are frozen, but we thaw them out, and then we'll put them in the exhibit for them to find, sometimes down in the water. And they also seem to like carrots as well. Wouldn't think that an otter would like a carrot, but yep, they certainly do. And so that PVC thing that you were looking at is one of those environmental enrichment devices, EEDs, but also known as toys that we can put in there of various contraptions, usually having to do with food.
Are there any other questions? What is the best way for educators to be able to connect with more programs you may offer virtually?
Yeah, so you can go to mote.org/Marven, M-A-R-V-E-N, and that's a great way to stay in touch. You can also, of course, email me, scan that QR code, or email me if you have any questions, and maybe you'd like to connect your audience. Again, we have virtual programs for pre-K through grade, but we also have, and I didn't get a chance to showcase this, hopefully you get a chance to come and see in person, 3 incredible STEM teaching laboratories downstairs. Each one is focused on different aspects of the research here at Mote. The first one is focused on marine ecology, and so we have students able to come in. About 70,000 teachers and students locally will be able to come through for free programming at some level. And that first one's focused on marine ecology. We have diamondback terrapins in there, little aquaculture demonstration lab, crabs and corals in there. Next door to that is our biomedical and immunology laboratory, and then next door to that is ocean technology. So we have 3 brand new state-of-the-art spaces for doing programming with the field trips from schools, but also homeschool students, and I'm also doing some adult lifelong learning programs in there in the afternoons. Thank you so much, the exhibit navigator.
So we're so excited to have you. Thank you so much, Jason. And we know we'll be looking forward to seeing you at FMSEA 2026 in Fort Pierce. And if you guys have any questions or are interested in any of our other virtual series, our next virtual series is going to be in partnership with FAU. We're learning about FAU Harbor Branch's programming, and that is February 25th at 4 p.m. And you can find more information out on our socials. And there is the email for Marvin, again, Marvin with an E at mote.org.
And that QR code, if you scan it, will take you to a feedback form for this program. Please let me know what you think, and if you have any suggestions on how to make it more engaging, both for high school as well as other audiences. Thank you.